Chapter 11. Aadhira stood before the full-length mirror, her heartbeat quickening as she stared at the deep red sari draped around her body. The silk was rich and luxurious, the exact shade Rudra had chosen. She told herself she'd selected it purely because it was beautiful, not because he had picked it. But as she adjusted the delicate fabric, her reflection betrayed the truth in her eyes. Ever since Ishani's return and the whirlwind of conflicts, every interaction between them had become a volatile blend of anger and desire. Each touch, each glance felt electrifying yet forbidden, pulling her toward a man she swore she didn't want. But tonight, standing alone, enveloped in the silk he'd chosen, she had to admit, if only to herself, that denying the pull he had over her was growing increasingly difficult. The sound of footsteps at the doorway broke her from her reverie. Her pulse quickened even more as she met Rudra's intense gaze in the mirror. His dark eyes swept over her, pausing at the fabric wrapped snugly around her curves. A charged silence filled the space, thickening the air with unspoken words. "You wore this for me, didn't you?" Rudra whispered softly, stepping into the room. His voice was husky, layered with something undeniably possessive, yet startlingly gentle. "No," she replied quickly, a little too quickly, turning to face him. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotions she desperately tried to conceal. A smirk lifted the corner of his lips, a knowing look spreading across his face. "You're lying," he whispered, taking slow, deliberate steps toward her. She instinctively stepped backward, feeling the cool surface of the mirror pressing against her back. Rudra advanced steadily, closing the distance until only mere inches separated them. She wanted to move, to create distance, to shatter the intimate atmosphere that threatened to engulf them. But she was rooted to the spot, unable or unwilling to escape. "You chose this sari because I chose it," he whispered, his eyes darkening as his fingers traced the delicate fabric along her waist, igniting trails of heat across her skin. "You wore it for me, Aadhira." "No, Rudra," she repeated weakly, her voice barely audible even to herself. Her breath caught sharply when his fingers lingered, the light touch scorching through the silk, branding her skin with his mark. His eyes narrowed, dangerous yet strangely vulnerable. With a slow, deliberate movement, he lifted her chin, forcing her to look directly into his penetrating gaze. Their faces were mere inches apart, their breaths mingling in the charged silence. She saw the intensity in his dark eyes, the conflict raging within him, the possessiveness battling a deeper emotion he refused to acknowledge. "Stop lying to yourself," he murmured, his voice low and rough, his gaze falling momentarily to her lips. "We both know why you're wearing this tonight." Her heart slammed wildly in her chest, breath hitching as she struggled to remain defiant. But the truth was undeniable. Every nerve in her body responded to his proximity, to his touch, to the possessive claim hidden beneath his soft words. The air crackled with tension, pulling them toward a precipice neither was prepared to cross. "You don't know anything about me, Rudra," she whispered fiercely, her voice betraying a mix of vulnerability and defiance. His thumb brushed gently across her jawline, his touch almost tender. "I know more than you think," he murmured, voice lowering to a dangerously seductive whisper. He leaned closer still, his lips barely an inch from hers, drawing out every torturous second. Her heart slammed wildly against her chest as she struggled not to close the gap. But before their lips could meet, before the fragile boundary between anger and longing shattered completely, she drew upon her last ounce of strength and pushed him away, stepping back sharply. The spell broke, leaving them both breathing raggedly, hearts racing, gazes locked in heated conflict. "You don't love me, Rudra," she said, her voice trembling with barely restrained emotion. "You're just possessive. I'm nothing more than a prize to you, another thing to control." Her words hit him like a blow. Rudra's jaw tightened, his expression hardening as the truth in her accusation sank in. He wanted to deny it, to tell her that she was wrong, that she meant more to him than he was willing to admit. But he remained silent, because in the depths of his heart, he knew she had seen right through him. Aadhira took one last look at him, her eyes glistening with hurt, disappointment, and an emotion she was desperately trying to suppress. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the stark silence of their shared room, fists clenched at his sides. As she disappeared from sight, Rudra's fists tightened, his nails digging sharply into his palms. A wave of frustration surged through him, mingling with regret, and something he refused to identify as pain. She was right. He had used his possessiveness as armor, disguising his deeper emotions behind layers of control. Now, standing alone in the empty room, watching her retreating figure vanish into the shadows, he felt a painful truth settle deep within him. She was breaking through every wall he had carefully built, one crack at a time, and he didn't know how to stop it, or if he even wanted to. Chapter